Now, Reince Priebus can leave with his head held high tonight. He helped Republicans win the House, the Senate, and the White House. He's not responsible that they broke their promises. He served the country with honor and distinction, as the president said, under very grueling and difficult circumstances. Now, you critics out there, you can say whatever you want, but I'm telling you, what these people in this White House, what they are up against, it's unparalleled. And joining us now, former RNC chair, and I guess now former chief of staff, Reince Priebus. How are you doing at this moment? How are you feeling? Is this, you feel good about this, bad about this? Has this been building? Where are you with this?
Well, I mean, obviously it's always mixed feelings, but generally good. Number one, it was an honor and a privilege to serve President Trump. I think he's doing an amazing job. I think he needs to get more credit for the great work he's doing. And I don't know, obviously, why he hasn't gotten more recognition around the country for the bills, the executive orders, and this constant obsession over distractions. And so, look, he's doing a great job. But I'm feeling good about the fact that he's making a change that makes him comfortable with moving forward. We had a good talk yesterday. I resigned. He accepted it. And then we started working together and talking quite a few times about who would be a great pick to come in here and be the chief of staff. And I can't think of anyone better than a four-star General John Kelly, who's a good, decent, tough guy, who's exactly the type of person the president needs. So I'm happy for him. I think actually going a different direction, hitting a reset button is a good thing. And the president did that. And so I think he's happy. I got to tell you, although it's always a little mixed when things like this happen, I generally feel pretty good.
You know, the weird thing is, I know recent events with Anthony Scaramucci, who I also know, and I've known you for many, many years. I was on the campaign trail with you. I saw you the days of debate. I probably had more midnight to 1 a.m. conversations with you during the campaign and now than I really care to admit, and probably you care to acknowledge that you ever talked to me. But
yeah, we do.
But you guys got along. I mean, you guys were friends. You guys were going to work together.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say, and we'll always continue to talk, Sean, you're a great friend. We appreciate you very much. Look, another thing is with me is I'm not going to get into that subject. It's getting in the mud, and I think the palace intrigue stuff is annoying, and I think it's a distraction. It takes away from the president's agenda. I think what everyone needs to do is just focus on the president, to focus on the things that he wants to get done for the American people. You know what's in his heart. I know his heart. He's a genuine, decent, incredibly hardworking president that deserves the credit that he has coming for the incredible accomplishments that he's taken part of. And so those other things, you know, some of that stuff this week, I just think it's an annoying distraction that it's not right for people to talk about, especially employees of the West Wing.
Why did you decide now, and you're saying you helped the president in offering up names for your replacement, so that tells me that this has gone on for some period of time, and you also told me earlier that you're actually going to stay around for a while. You're going to help in the transition. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, we started talking about this yesterday. You know, I told you we had a conversation when I resigned yesterday privately. The future is, I talked to General Kelly tonight. Obviously, we talk often because he's a cabinet secretary. I've gotten to know him. He's a great man. I'm going to be involved in about a 2-week transition here to help the general kind of get around and meet all the different employees that are doing great work here. And I'll always be available. I'm going to be on Team Trump all the time. I'll always be out there trying to help the president advance his goals, support him as a friend, too. And that's the other part of the job that people don't realize. You actually become friends. You know, when you go through thick and thin together, you get to know people really well. And he's a good man. And I was honored to be able to serve him.
Listen, Reince, I can attest to it because I saw it all through the campaign, and I saw it when I was there in the times that I've interviewed the president or been to the White House. I saw how close you were, and I guess that's the surprise. But I did say in my opening monologue, and I want to go through each challenge that I think is fairly unprecedented, and the intensity of of those that want to hurt this president, delegitimize his agenda, prevent him from being successful, and that would get to the deep state. That would get to Democrats from day one never accepted the results. That would get to a media that has been obsessed on one issue with no evidence. That has been even Republicans that have talked badly behind the president's back that don't want him to succeed, and never Trumpers. Overall, it seems like since day one there has been an unnatural, unprecedented, never-ending attacks on this White House more than others. Is that an accurate description, or am I off?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I'll just look at the numbers on Senate confirmations. They're debating people for 30 hours. That's an entire week on the Senate floor. And then they vote for that particular nominee 90-10. So in other words, all of this, it's unprecedented. You can look at the percentages of cabinet secretaries appointed, when they were appointed, the minuscule amount of cooperation that this president gets from the Democrats in the House and the Senate, the media feeding frenzy, the fact that people are trying to become famous in the press room. I mean, I can go on and on and on. The point is hitting a reset button. Now, it affects me, but put me aside. It doesn't matter. You got to look at this stuff objectively. The president hitting the reset button, saying, okay, let's try something different, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. And I think General Kelly, given the tools, making sure that he's the chief of staff and he's in charge of hiring, firing, everyone reports to General Kelly, I think it's a good formula. That's how he will be successful.
Can we go through these challenges that I think are unique? More than the previous two administrations, the deep state has leaked intelligence on this president. We saw what happened with the general counsel of the White House in Sarah Carter's article earlier or yesterday that we broke on this program. And then we also had the issue of James Comey. But I want to specifically get to, there was one report of 125 leaks in 126 days, 7 times the past two administrations. How much of your day was consumed with either that or Russia, Russia, Russia with no evidence? And did that hurt? Did that make your job 50 times harder?
Well, of course. I mean, we walked into the West Wing with these challenges, and they continue. The collusion story is a joke. I honestly don't believe there's a lot of people out there that actually believe that campaign people were sitting on telephones and having meetings and passing secret messages, trying to figure out how to mess around with the election. It's ridiculous. But yet, if you look at headlines over the last 6 months, you would think that that's the only thing happening in the world. Here's the good thing. It's for everyone out there that do love our president. The good thing is that when you go to rallies in Youngstown, Ohio, like we did 2 or 3 days ago, there is not a politician in America, probably the world, but there's not a politician anywhere on the planet that can go to any arena in the United States, fill it up, and have 10,000 people waiting outside. And, by the way, go give a speech with everyone going bananas in the arena. I mean, and so you look at the numbers out in the Midwest where I come from, the president's very popular. The problem with Washington is you live in a little tiny bubble. And this bubble is very, very different than the rest of the country. And then you read the New York Times, the Washington Post, and you read all of this stuff, and you start thinking, what in the world is going on? And so I just try to tell them to focus on the real issues.
You know, I want to get to the media in just a second, because that also played a part in this, and that's one of the 5, I think, big institutions that don't want the president to succeed and are trying to delegitimize him and preventing his agenda from being enacted. You know, you mentioned the crowds, and I watched the speech that you referred to very, very closely, as I have all of his rallies, and I covered so many of them. And my question to you is, you had a very successful run as the chairman of the RNC. You helped elect a lot of the people in the House and the Senate. And in fairness to the House people, it wasn't the bill that I would have chosen, but they worked hard and long.
They got it done.
They got it done. All right, Mitch McConnell didn't get it done. John McCain comes back and did what he did, and we wish him well, but I did not like what he did last night, nor did any of them run on the skinny, repeal bill to get it into conference to hope that they can fix it there. My question is this. To the extent that the Republicans are, in my view, lacking the identity that the president has, he's saying, I'll build the wall. I'll repeal and replace. Tax cuts for the middle class, for corporations, repatriation, energy independence, define Islam as radical Islam. Very definitive stances, and you see the crowds. I didn't see that with the Republicans this week. And you helped elect a lot of those guys. Were you as disappointed as I am?
I was very disappointed. I don't blame the leadership, though. I don't think they could have. They tried everything. In the end, you got to have 50 votes. And you can have a majority, but if you don't have a governing majority, then you really don't have a majority. And so working on that is important. I mean, getting John McCain back on board with a health care reform bill, repeal and replace, I think it's still possible. I think getting Lisa Murkowski on board with repealing and replacing Obamacare is going to be important. Here's the thing. I don't think it's over, though, Sean. I would not say that repealing and replacing Obamacare before the end of September is off the table. Can I say something, though? After 7 years, you know what I didn't hear this week, except for maybe Senator Ted Cruz, who deserves credit, or the Freedom Caucus guys, and I know you work so closely with them on the House bill, and even in this bill I hear they were involved too, but I didn't hear about health care cooperatives, health care savings accounts. These are fundamental principles I've been talking about on air, and you've been discussing as the RNC chairman for 15, 20 years, and they weren't even in the bill. Well, and they were in the original bill, but as they kept peeling things off of the bill, it became, as they say, skinnier and skinnier. But again, I want to emphasize the fact, looking forward positively, I think the Republicans can still get this thing done. They only need one more vote. They can get Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins or John McCain to come up with something that may work. Now, Lindsey Graham and Cassidy and others are talking about a straight-up block grant and send the money back to the states. Maybe that's going to catch fire. I think it might. The point of this, though, is that I believe, like you, that it's President Trump's agenda that won the election in November. It's the things, actually, that the president's been talking about for 30 years, so it's not like someone, we just came up with this. He's been talking about this stuff for decades. And that's the agenda that everyone needs to be rowing in the same direction on. I gave the speech that the president gave in Youngstown to the senior staff the other day, and I said, this is the president's agenda. Everyone should read this speech, learn it, and do everything you can to enact these promises that the president talks about and has crowds coming out of the woodwork for. This is where the focus needs to be.